All right. Today, we are jumping into one of the most fundamental parts of project management, cost estimation. In a nutshell, this is the whole process of figuring out the financial resources you're going to need to get a project done, from the very beginning to the very end.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics, what cost estimation is and why it's so important. Then we'll open up the project manager's toolkit and look at the key methods they use. After that, we'll see how this all works in the real world, and we'll finish up with a final analysis and a little memory trick to help you ace your exams. Okay, let's dive right in. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, we have to understand what we're talking about and why it's considered the financial backbone of any project that hopes to succeed.
So, at its core, cost estimation is all about building a solid financial forecast. And it's not just pulling a number out of thin air. We're talking about a detailed prediction that tries to account for every single thing the project will need, all the people, all the materials, all the gear for its entire life.
So why is this such a big deal? Well, think of it like this. A good cost estimate is the foundation for your whole project budget. It tells you how to slice up the pie and allocate your funds. It's also that first big hurdle for decision makers. It helps them decide if a project is even worth doing from a financial standpoint. And once you're up and running, that estimate becomes your baseline, the ruler you use to measure all your spending to keep things from going off the rails.
But here's the catch. An estimate is just that, an educated guess. It's only as good as the information you have. So, what are the big variables that can throw a wrench in the works and completely derail a project's budget?
You can really boil it down to four major things. First, the project's scope and complexity. I mean, it's pretty obvious. A bigger, more tangled project is going to need more cash. Second, the resources themselves. What's the cost of skilled labor? Are materials easy to get? Third, the timeline. A longer project almost always means higher costs. And finally, you have the great unknown, risks and uncertainties. These are the curveballs you didn't see coming that can wreck even the most carefully planned budget. Okay, so now let's get into the how. Let's talk about the different techniques project managers have at their disposal to actually come up with these numbers. Think of these as the essential tools in their toolkit, each one right for a different job. First step is analogous estimation. Honestly, you can think of this as the I've seen this movie before method. You look at a similar project you've done in the past and you basically say, hey, if that one cost us X amount, then this new one should be in the same ballpark. It's super quick, which is great when you're just starting out, but you have to be careful. Its accuracy really depends on how truly similar those two projects are. This quote pretty much nails it. You're using history as a direct comparison. It's a great way to get a quick, high-level number on the board, but its biggest weakness is that it can totally miss the unique details and curveballs of the new project. Next, things get a bit more, well, scientific. This is parametric estimation. Instead of just comparing whole projects, you use a statistical relationship. You find a specific, measurable unit, a parameter, and you use its known cost to scale up your estimate. A classic example? Road construction. If your data shows it costs, say, $1 million to build 1 kilometer of road, you can pretty confidently estimate that a new 5-kilometer stretch of road will cost you $5 million. See, it's more accurate because it's based on a real, quantifiable metric. And finally, we have two techniques that are basically polar opposites of each other. With top-down estimation, you start with the big number. A total project cost is set from on high, and then that gets divided up among all the different tasks. It's fast, so it's good for early planning. Bottom up, as you can probably guess, does the exact reverse. You meticulously figure out the cost of every single little task and then add them all up to get your grand total. It takes a lot more time and effort, but the result is usually way more accurate. So we've covered the theory and the tools. But how does this all come together in the real world? Let's walk through the actual step-by-step process for building a cost estimate from scratch. Following a structured process like this is absolutely key to making sure nothing slips through the cracks. It all starts with defining the project scope with crystal clarity. From there, you list out every single resource you'll need. Then you put a price tag on each of those items. After that, you add it all up. But you're not done yet. The last step is maybe the most important: review and refine. You have to keep checking your work, looking for inaccuracies and making adjustments. Here's a really simple, practical example for a software project. This is a perfect illustration of that bottom-up approach we talked about. You can see how they've estimated the cost for each individual piece: the developer salaries, the software licenses, the hardware, and so on. And then they just add them all up to get that total estimated cost of $200,000. Okay, for our last section, let's take a step back and look at the whole picture. We'll break down the biggest advantages and the limitations, and then I'll give you a simple way to lock all of this into your brain. The key thing to remember here is that it's a balancing act. Cost estimation is a ridiculously powerful tool for planning and keeping control of your finances. But you gotta remember, it's not a crystal ball. No estimate is ever going to be 100% perfect. Unexpected risks are always out there. And frankly, the quality of your estimate really depends on how good your past data is and how experienced your team is. Now, let's talk exams. If you get a question asking you to define cost estimation, this is your go-to answer. It hits all the key points, it's predictive, it's about calculating total financial resources, and it does that by estimating the cost of everything you need. It's the perfect summary. And to make sure those 4 main techniques actually stick with you, especially when you're under pressure in an exam, we're going to use a super simple acronym, ABPT. Just remember ABPT. A is for analogous, B is for bottom-up, P is for parametric, and T is for top-down. It's a really simple trick, but trust me, it's an effective way to recall these 4 main methods whenever you need them. And that brings us to a final thought to chew on. You know, projects happen in the real world where things are constantly changing. So maybe the goal isn't to create a perfect set-in-stone number. Maybe the real goal is to build a financial plan that's realistic, well-managed, and most importantly, flexible enough to handle whatever challenges come its way.